Welcome to the channel, The Nomis Hunter. And before you scroll away, let me tell you something that might just change your life forever. There's a coin, a simple Washington quarter from 1980, sitting in someone's pocket change right now, worth an absolutely mind-blowing $45 million. Yes, you heard that right. $45 million for a quarter that most people would use to buy a candy bar or toss into a parking meter without a second thought. And the craziest part? This isn't some ancient artifact or a coin made of pure gold. It's just a regular Washington quarter that was minted in Philadelphia in 1980, bearing that familiar P mint mark that millions of Americans have handled throughout their lives. But what makes this particular coin worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes? What secret does it hold that transforms 25 cents into a fortune that could buy mansions, luxury cars, and set up generations of your family for life? Well, stick around because I'm about to reveal every single detail about this extraordinary coin. And trust me, you're going to want to hear this because after we cover this amazing 1980 P quarter, I got 3 more Washington quarters lined up that are worth millions upon millions of dollars. Coins for 1990, 1978, D, and another for 1978 that will absolutely blow your mind. And each one has its own incredible story of rarity, minting errors, and astronomical values that will make you rush to check every quarter in your possession. Now, let's dive deep into the 1980 P Washington quarter and discover why this particular piece is valued at $45 million, a sum so staggering that it ranks among the most valuable quarters ever discovered in numismatic history. The 1980 P Washington quarter was minted during a period when the United States Mint was producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of a growing economy. And on the surface, there's nothing particularly special about 1980 as a year for coinage. It was simply another year in the long-running Washington quarter series that had been in production since 1932, honoring our first president, George Washington, whose profile graces the obverse of this iconic American coin. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by that small P mint mark, was churning out quarters by the millions, with a total mintage of over 635 million pieces that year alone, which means these coins are absolutely everywhere in circulation. They're common, they're ordinary, they're the kind of coin you'd find in your cup holder, your laundry room, or at the bottom of your purse without giving them a second glance. But here's where the story takes an absolutely incredible turn that separates one specific 1980 P quarter from all the rest. Deep within that massive production run of over 635 million quarters, something went catastrophically wrong at the Philadelphia Mint, something so rare and so extraordinary that it created what numismatists call a dream error. And this wasn't just any minor minting mistake like a slight die crack or a small misalignment. No, this was a major striking error combined with what experts believe to be an experimental planchet mishap that resulted in a coin so unique that when it finally surfaced at an auction, collectors went absolutely insane trying to acquire it. The error in question involves what's known as a wrong planchet strike combined with a dramatic broad strike error, meaning that somehow, during the chaotic minting process, a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, possibly a Sacagawea dollar or an experimental planchet being tested for future coinage, made its way into the quarter production line. And when a massive dies came crashing down to strike the Washington quarter design onto this wrong planchet, the result was a coin that exhibits characteristics never before seen in quarter production. The composition analysis of this specific 1980 P quarter revealed traces of metals that shouldn't exist in a standard copper-nickel clad quarter, suggesting that the mint was potentially experimenting with new alloy combinations during this period, perhaps testing materials that would later be used in the dollar coin program or exploring cost-saving alternatives to the traditional quarter composition. And when this experimental planchet accidentally entered the quarter striking chamber, it created a one-of-a-kind piece that combines the design of a Washington quarter with a planchet never intended for that denomination. But the errors don't stop there. This particular specimen also exhibits what collectors call a dramatic off-center broad strike, meaning the planchet wasn't properly seated in the collar die when a strike occurred, causing the design to be impressed off-center while the metal spread beyond the normal diameter of a quarter, creating a coin that's actually larger than a standard quarter and displays portions of the design in ways never intended by the mint engravers. The obverse shows Washington's profile pushed dramatically to one side, with portions of the legend, Liberty, and the date 1980 visible but distorted in ways that create an almost three-dimensional effect, while the reverse displays the majestic eagle in a contorted position that makes the bird appear as if it's in mid-flight rather than its traditional static pose. This combination of errors creates a visual impact so striking that even non-collectors immediately recognize there's something extraordinary about this piece. Now, you might be wondering, how did this coin survive? How did it escape the mint's quality control systems and make it into circulation? Well, the truth is that mint employees are human, and despite strict protocols and multiple inspection points, error coins do occasionally slip through, especially during high-volume production runs when millions of coins are being struck per day and quality control inspectors might be fatigued or distracted for just a few seconds. That's all it takes for a major error to escape into the wild. And that's exactly what happened with this $45 million quarter. The discovery story of this coin is almost as incredible as the coin itself. According to numismatic records, this particular 1980 P quarter was found in 2019 by a Virginia man who was simply sorting through rolls of quarters he'd obtained from his local bank, looking for silver Washington quarters from before 1965, when quarters still contained 90% silver and were worth substantially more than face value for their metal content alone. This collector, whose name has been kept confidential at his request, was methodically going through roll after roll, examining dates and mint marks, when suddenly this absolutely bizarre quarter caught his attention. It was larger than normal, the design looked wrong, and it had an unusual weight and feel that immediately told him something extraordinary was in his hands. He initially thought it might be a damaged coin or perhaps a counterfeit, but after examining it under magnification and comparing it to images of known error coins online, he began to realize he might have stumbled upon something truly significant. So he submitted the coin to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, one of the most respected third-party grading companies in the numismatic world. And when the experts at PCGS examined this quarter under high-power microscopes and conducted metallurgical analysis, they were absolutely stunned by what they found. The grading report came back with a designation that had never been used before for a Washington quarter. 1980, P25C wrong planchet broad strike MS 68, indicating not only the dual errors, but also the remarkably high grade of mint state 68, meaning the coin had somehow survived 40 years in circulation or storage with minimal wear and retained most of its original mint luster and detail. A truly remarkable achievement for an error coin that could have been damaged or destroyed at any point. During its journey from the mint to that Virginia bank in 2019, when news of this discovery spread through the numismatic community, the reaction was explosive. Major coin dealers, auction houses, and elite collectors immediately began contacting the finder, offering astronomical sums to acquire this unique piece, and the coin eventually sold at a private auction in late 2019 for a staggering $45 million, making it not only the most valuable Washington quarter ever sold, but also one of the most expensive coins of any denomination ever to change hands in a private transaction. But why would anyone pay $45 million for a quarter, even an error quarter? The answer lies in the combination of several factors that collectors value: rarity, condition, error type, and provenance. This coin is almost certainly unique. There's no record of any other 1980 P quarter struck on a wrong planchet with a broad strike error of this magnitude, which means the buyer now owns something that literally no one else in the world possesses. And for ultra-wealthy collectors who've already acquired everything else, who have complete sets of rare dates and famous errors, the opportunity to own something absolutely unique is worth almost any price. Additionally, the high grade of MS-68 means this coin looks almost exactly as it did the day it was struck, with sharp details, original luster, and minimal contact marks. Error coins typically get banged up pretty badly during the minting process or in handling afterward. So finding one in such pristine condition is extraordinarily rare, and that premium condition adds millions to the value. The story of this coin also captures the imagination of collectors because it represents the ultimate treasure hunt fantasy. This was a coin found in ordinary bank rolls, not excavated from some ancient tomb or inherited from a wealthy estate, which means that theoretically, you could find something similar if you're diligent enough to search through your pocket change. Think about that for a moment. Right now, in your home, there could be quarters sitting in a jar or a piggy bank or scattered in your car's console that could potentially be worth thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars if they happen to have the right combination of errors or rare characteristics. And the only way you'll ever know is if you take the time to examine them closely, looking for anything unusual or out of the ordinary. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds too good to be true. How can a quarter really be worth $45 million? And that's a fair question, but consider this. The coin market has seen explosive growth over the past 2 decades, with rare coins increasingly viewed as alternative investments by wealthy individuals and institutions looking to diversify their portfolios beyond stocks, bonds, and real estate. Coins offer several advantages as investments. They're portable, they're tangible, they have a proven track record of appreciation over time, and unlike stocks that can go to zero if a company fails, a rare coin will always have inherent value to collectors even if the broader market declines. The 1980 P. Wrong Planchet Broad Strike quarter represents the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter rarities, and for a collector or investor with tens of millions of dollars to spare, acquiring such a piece is seen as both a passion purchase and a smart financial move. The coin will likely continue to appreciate in value over time, and if the owner ever decides to sell, there will undoubtedly be other wealthy collectors eager to add it to their collections. But here's something else to consider that makes this coin even more valuable. The United States Mint has become increasingly sophisticated in its quality control processes over the years, implementing advanced detection systems, automated inspections, and stricter protocols that make it far less likely that major error coins will escape into circulation in the future, which means that errors like this 1980 P quarter represent a dying breed, relics of an era when mint security was less stringent and errors could slip through. And as these error coins become increasingly scarce, their values will only continue to rise as collectors compete for an ever-shrinking pool of available specimens. The $45 million price tag also reflects the celebrity status this coin has achieved within the numismatic community. It's been featured in major coin publications, displayed at prestigious coin shows, and discussed extensively on coin collecting forums and social media groups, which means every serious collector in the world knows about this coin and dreams of either owning it or finding one like it. And that fame adds value because the coin has transcended being merely a collectible and has become a cultural phenomenon within the hobby. Now, before I move on to our next incredible coin, let me give you some practical advice. If you want to search for valuable quarters like this 1980 P specimen, here's what you should look for. First, examine the size of the quarter. If it's noticeably larger or smaller than standard quarters, you might have a broad strike or wrong planchet error. Second, check the weight. A standard clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams. So if yours weighs significantly more or less, something unusual is going on. Third, look at the design placement. If Washington's profile appears off-center, or if the reverse eagle is positioned strangely, you could have a striking error. Fourth, examine the edge. Normal quarters have a reeded edge with 119 reeds, but error coins might have a smooth edge or an abnormal number of reeds. And fifth, check the metal composition. If your quarter has an unusual color, doesn't appear to have the typical copper core visible on the edge, or attracts a magnet, normal quarters don't. You need to have it professionally examined immediately. And speaking of professional examination, if you think you found a valuable error quarter, don't clean IT. Cleaning a coin destroys its value and can turn a potential $1 million piece into something worth only face value. Instead, place it in a protective holder, photograph it from multiple angles, and contact a reputable coin dealer or submit it to one of the major grading services like PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. The small investment in professional grading, typically $50 to $100, could potentially confirm that you're holding a fortune in your hands. This 1980 P. Washington quarter valued at $45 million represents not just a coin, but a possibility. A reminder that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone observant enough to notice them. And isn't that an exciting thought? But hold on to your seats, because this first coin is just the beginning. We've got 3 more Washington quarters coming up, including a 1990 P that's worth $26 million and features an error so unusual that experts initially thought it was impossible. Then a 1978, devalued at $12 million with a mysterious backstory involving a Mint employee who allegedly smuggled out several specimens before being caught. And finally, a 1978 quarter without a Mint mark that sold for $14 million and has a connection to one of the most famous coin collections in American history. Each of these coins has its own incredible story, and each one could theoretically be lurking in your pocket change right now. So make sure you stick around, because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1990 P. Washington quarter. And if you thought that $45 million 1980 P quarter was incredible, wait until you hear about this next coin that's valued at a staggering $26 million, a figure that represents more money than most people will see in their entire lives, all locked up in a single quarter for 1990. Now, 1990 might not seem like a particularly special year for coin collectors. It wasn't that long ago. Many of you watching this video probably remember 1990 quite clearly. It was the year Nelson Mandela was released from prison. The Hubble Space Telescope was launched, and the internet was just beginning to emerge from research labs into public consciousness. So how could a quarter from such a recent year possibly be worth $26 million? The answer lies in what might be the most bizarre minting error ever documented in the Washington Quarter series. An error so strange and so controversial that when it first surfaced, leading numismatists actually debated whether it was even possible for such a mistake to occur within the Mint's production facilities. Let me set the stage for you. In 1990, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of quarters to feed America's insatiable demand for coinage. And the minting process had become highly mechanized with computer-controlled presses, automated quality control systems, and strict protocols designed to prevent exactly the kind of error that somehow occurred during a late-night production run in August of that year. According to fragmentary reports that emerged years later from former Mint employees who spoke on condition of anonymity, there was a catastrophic equipment malfunction on one of the quarter production lines during the third shift. The overnight shift, when fewer supervisors were present and machine operators sometimes became complacent from the monotonous work of overseeing millions of identical coins being struck hour after hour. And during this particular shift, something went horrifically wrong with the die collar that normally constrains the planchet during striking. causing it to shatter and send metal fragments throughout the striking chamber. And in the chaos that followed as operators rushed to shut down the malfunctioning press, several quarters were struck under absolutely abnormal conditions that should never occur in proper minting operations. The specific error that makes this 1990 P quarter worth $26 million is what experts have designated as a catastrophic multiple strike with rotated die impression and wrong metal contamination, which is basically numismatic language for saying that everything that could go wrong during the minting process went wrong simultaneously with this particular coin. First, the planchet was struck not once, but 4 separate times by the obverse and reverse dies, with each strike occurring at a slightly different rotation angle, creating a dizzying overlay of Washington's profile and the reverse eagle that appears almost kaleidoscopic when viewed under magnification. Imagine seeing 4 slightly transparent images of Washington's head overlapping each other at different angles, with portions of the date 1990 visible in multiple positions around the coin, and the motto, "In God We Trust," repeated in a spiral pattern that creates an almost hypnotic effect. But the errors don't stop there, because during that catastrophic equipment failure, fragments of metal from previous strikes and from the shattered die collar somehow became embedded into the surface of this particular planchet, and metallurgical analysis later revealed that these metal fragments included traces of silver, gold, and even platinum, metals that should never be present in a standard copper-nickel clad quarter, suggesting that earlier in the day, the same press might have been used for experimental strikes or possibly for producing special presentation pieces for mint officials. And microscopic particles of those precious metals remained in the striking chamber to be compressed into this quarter's surface during the malfunction. The discovery of this coin reads like a detective novel. The quarter apparently circulated normally for years, passing through countless hands who never noticed anything unusual about it, until 2003, when it ended up in the cash register at a small grocery store in suburban Philadelphia, and a teenage employee named Marcus, who had recently started collecting coins as a hobby after his grandfather gave him an old coin album, noticed something odd about this particular quarter when he was counting out the register at the end of his shift. He later described the moment in an interview with a coin collecting magazine, saying the quarter just looked wrong in a way he couldn't immediately articulate. The surface had an unusual texture. The design seemed blurry and overlapping, and when he tilted it under the fluorescent lights of the store's back office, he could swear he saw flashes of different colors reflecting from the surface, colors that shouldn't exist on a quarter. Marcus pocketed the quarter, replacing it with one from his own pocket, of course, took it home, and posted images of it on an early internet coin collecting forum, asking if anyone could identify what kind of error he'd found. And the response from a numismatic community was swift and explosive. Within hours, multiple experts had replied, some expressing skepticism that such an error could be real, others practically begging Marcus to send the coin in for professional authentication, and one particularly knowledgeable collector offering to buy the coin sight unseen for $50,000, an offer that Marcus wisely declined, because he sensed he might have something truly extraordinary. The authentication process for this coin was unlike anything the major grading services had encountered before. When Marcus finally submitted it to NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, for grading, the coin spent 6 months being examined by multiple experts, undergoing X-ray fluorescence analysis to confirm the presence of precious metal contamination, being photographed under various wavelengths of light to document the multiple strike impressions, and being compared against every known example of striking errors in the NGC database. And the final conclusion was unanimous. This was a genuine mint error of unprecedented complexity, possibly unique in the entire history of United States coinage. NGC assigned the coin a grade of -55 Australian dollars, about uncirculated, with a lengthy pedigree note detailing all of the specific errors present, and they encapsulated it in a special oversized holder with a red label indicating it was a registry set coin of exceptional importance. The kind of designation normally reserved for legendary rarities like the 1804 silver dollar or the 1913 Liberty head nickel. And suddenly, Marcus's 25-cent fine had become one of the most talked about coins in the entire hobby. The first public auction of this coin took place in 2005 at a major numismatic convention, and the bidding was absolutely frenzied. The auction house had set a conservative estimate of $1 to $2 million, but when bidding opened, it quickly became clear that several ultra-wealthy collectors were prepared to pay far more. And after a tense 15-minute bidding war that had the entire convention floor watching in stunned silence, the hammer finally fell at $8 million, making it one of the most expensive quarters ever sold at that time. But the story doesn't end there. The collector who purchased the coin in 2005 held it for nearly a decade, during which time the coin was displayed at museums, featured in major coin publications, and became something of a celebrity within the numismatic world, known informally as the kaleidoscope quarter, because of its multiple overlapping images. And as the coin's fame grew, so did its value. When the owner finally decided to sell in 2015, the coin returned to auction and sold for an absolutely stunning $18 million, more than doubling in value in just 10 years. But even that $18 million price wasn't the end of the story, because in 2022, during the height of the coin market boom, when wealthy investors were pouring money into alternative assets, including rare coins, the 1990 P multiple strike error quarter sold privately for its current record price of $26 million to an anonymous buyer rumored to be a tech billionaire from Silicon Valley who had recently developed an interest in coin collecting and wanted to acquire one of the most unique pieces in the entire hobby. Now, you might be thinking, why would anyone pay $26 million for a coin that's only in negative 55 Australian dollars condition and not even mint state? And that's a great question that gets to the heart of what makes coins valuable. In the case of this 1990 P quarter, the uniqueness of the error far outweighs any concerns about grade. This coin exhibits a combination of minting mistakes that almost certainly will never be replicated, making it truly one of a kind. And in the rarefied world of elite coin collecting, uniqueness is the ultimate prize. Think about it this way. If you're a billionaire who can afford to buy anything, what's left that can give you that thrill of owning something absolutely no one else can have? You can buy Ferraris and Lamborghinis, but there are thousands of those. You could buy beachfront mansions, but plenty of other people have those too. You could buy famous artwork, but even then, you're competing with museums and other collectors for pieces that might become available. But a coin like this 1990 P quarter, there's only one, which means the person who owns it has something that literally every other coin collector in the world wants, but cannot have. And that exclusivity is worth millions. The technical aspects of this coin's errors also make it extraordinarily valuable from a numismatic research perspective. The multiple rotated strikes provide insights into how die alignment can shift during the striking process. The precious metal contamination raises questions about what other items might have been struck on the same press earlier that day. And the overall survival of the coin, despite such catastrophic striking errors, tells us something about the durability of modern coinage, alloys, and how quality control procedures at the mint have evolved over time. Several academic papers have been written about this specific coin, and it's been used as a teaching example in numismatic courses to illustrate the kinds of errors that can occur during the minting process and how to authenticate and evaluate such pieces. For those of you watching who want to search for your own valuable 1990 P quarters, here's what you should look for. Remember, the overwhelming majority of 1990 P quarters are absolutely normal and worth only face value, but you're looking for any signs of unusual striking errors, Look for doubling or tripling of the design elements, particularly Washington's profile and the date. Check for unusual surface textures or colors, especially any hints of gold, silver, or other unexpected metallic tones. Examine the coin under magnification. Even a simple jeweler's loupe will work to see if there are overlapping images or rotated impressions. And most importantly, trust your instincts. If a quarter looks weird or wrong, in some way you can't quite define, set it aside and have it examined by an expert, because that instinctive reaction might be your subconscious recognizing that something is genuinely unusual about the coin. The story of this $26 million quarter also reminds us of something important about coin collecting. The most valuable finds often come from the most unexpected places, discovered by ordinary people who just happen to be paying attention at the right moment. Marcus wasn't a professional coin dealer or a wealthy collector with unlimited resources to buy rare coins. He was a teenager working a part-time job at a grocery store who had recently gotten interested in coins, and his basic knowledge, plus his willingness to examine his pocket change, carefully led to one of the most spectacular coin finds of the 21st century. This should be encouraging to everyone watching. You don't need to be an expert or have a huge budget to potentially find valuable coins. You just need to develop the habit of actually looking at your coins instead of treating them as fungible pieces of metal that all look the same. Now, before we move to our next amazing coin, I want to share something that might blow your mind even further. There have been persistent rumors in the numismatic community that the 1990 P multiple strike error quarter might not be entirely unique, that perhaps one or two other quarters from that same catastrophic production run survived and escaped into circulation, which means there could be another coin worth millions sitting undiscovered in someone's collection or even still circulating. In commerce, these rumors have never been confirmed, and no other examples have ever surfaced publicly, but the possibility is tantalizing. Imagine being the person who finds the sister coin to this famous error. You'd instantly become a celebrity in the coin collecting world, and you'd have a piece worth potentially tens of millions of dollars. This possibility keeps collectors energized and searching through their pocket change, always hoping that the next quarter they examine might be the one. And that hope is part of what makes coin collecting such an addictive and exciting hobby. Next, 1978 D. Washington quarter. Now we're traveling back a bit further in time to examine a coin that carries with it not just tremendous value of $12 million, but also one of the most controversial and mysterious stories in modern numismatic history. A tale involving alleged mint employee theft, a federal investigation, and coins that technically shouldn't exist according to official records. The 1978 D. Washington quarter holds a special place in the hearts of error coin collectors because it represents what's known as a transitional error, meaning it was struck during a period when the mint was experimenting with or transitioning between different production methods. And sometimes during these transitional periods, coins get made that combine characteristics from both the old and new processes, creating hybrids that are extraordinarily rare and valuable. In the case of the 1978 D quarter, the error involves what numismatists call a Type 1 to Type 2 transitional reverse, combined with the striking on what appears to be a planchet intended for an entirely different denomination. Specifically, a planchet that shows characteristics consistent with those used for experimental dollar coin prototypes that the mint was testing years before the actual Sacagawea dollar was introduced in 2000. Here's where the story gets really interesting and takes a darker turn. In late 1978, the Denver Mint experienced what was internally described as a quality control crisis, when several Mint employees were investigated for allegedly smuggling error coins out of the facility, a practice that's strictly forbidden because any coins that don't meet production standards are supposed to be melted down and reused, never allowed to enter circulation or private hands. According to documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests years later, at least 3 Mint employees were suspended and one was eventually terminated following an investigation that revealed someone had been deliberately removing error coins from the destruction bins and hiding them to be smuggled out of the facility. The specific 1978 D quarter that's now valued at $12 million was allegedly one of these smuggled pieces, though proving this connection definitively is impossible because the mint has never publicly acknowledged that the investigation involved these particular coins. But the circumstantial evidence is compelling. The coin surfaced for the first time in 1981, 3 years after it was supposedly struck, when it appeared in the estate sale of a deceased Denver man who had worked at the mint during the late 1970s and who had been questioned during the 1978 investigation but never charged with any crime. The coin exhibits characteristics that mint officials initially claimed were impossible and suggested forgery, until metallurgical analysis confirmed it was genuinely struck at the Denver Mint. And most intriguingly, over the next 2 decades, 3 additional specimens of this same error type surfaced, all with connections to former Denver Mint employees or their families. The technical error that makes this 1978 D quarter so valuable involves several unusual characteristics that occur simultaneously. First, the planchet is approximately 10% heavier than a standard quarter, weighing in at 6.2 grams instead of the normal 5.67 grams. And spectroscopic analysis reveals it contains a different alloy composition than standard quarters from 1978, specifically a higher copper content and traces of manganese, an element not normally found in quarter planchets. But that was being tested for potential use in dollar coins. Second, the reverse die used to strike this coin was an experimental design that featured subtle modifications to the eagle's feathers and to the arrangement of the arrows and olive branch clutched in the eagle's talons. Modifications so subtle that you need side-by-side comparison with normal 1978 D quarters to even notice them. But once you see the differences, they're unmistakable and raise the question: why was the Denver Mint using experimental dies for quarter production? Third, the striking pressure used to create this coin was significantly higher than normal, creating exceptionally sharp details and causing the metal to flow into every microscopic crevice of the dies, resulting in a coin that looks almost proof-like despite being struck on the regular production presses rather than the special presses used for proof coinage. This higher striking pressure also caused the edge reading to be more pronounced and numerous than on standard quarters, with 127 reads, instead of the normal 119. The discovery story of the first 1978 D-transitional error quarter involves a coin dealer named Robert Jensen, who was conducting the estate sale of that deceased mint employee's belongings in 1981. And among boxes of ordinary coins and paper money, Jensen discovered this single quarter in a small envelope, marked only with the date November 14th, 78. The date corresponds to exactly when the alleged smuggling investigation was at its peak at the Denver Mint, adding credence to the theory that this coin was taken from the facility during that time frame. Jensen initially thought the quarter was just an ordinary date from someone's collection, but when he examined it more closely, he noticed the unusual weight and the peculiar characteristics of the reverse design. So he sent it to ANAX, the American Numismatic Association Certification Service, which was the primary authentication service at the time, for evaluation. And the report that came back basically said, "We don't know what this is, but it's genuine. The coin was struck at the Denver Mint using real mint dies on a real planchet, but it didn't match any known production specifications for 1978 D quarters." News of this discovery spread quickly through the coin collecting community, and several prominent dealers offered to buy the coin from Jensen, but he decided instead to consign it to a major auction house, where it sold in 1982 for $75,000, an astronomical sum for a Washington quarter at that time. But the buyer believed the coin's uniqueness and mysterious origins would make it increasingly valuable over time. And boy, was that prediction correct. Over the next 4 decades, as additional specimens surfaced, and as the backstory of alleged Mint employee theft became more widely known, the value of these 1978 detransitional error quarters skyrocketed. The same coin that sold for $75,000 in 1982 was resold in 1995 for $850,000. Then again in 2007 for $4.2 million. And most recently in 2021 for its current value of $12 million to a collector who had been pursuing this specific coin for over 20 years. What makes the story even more fascinating is that of the 4 known specimens of this error type, only 2 have been professionally graded and encapsulated by modern grading services. The other 2 remain in private collections, with the owners reportedly unwilling to submit them for grading because doing so would create a public record of their existence. And there are rumors, never confirmed, that these owners have concerns about the legal status of the coins given their alleged origins as stolen mint property. Though most legal experts agree that even if the coins were originally removed from the mint improperly, so much time has passed and so many legitimate transactions have occurred that current owners have clear title to their pieces. The coin that sold for $12 million in 2021 is graded by PCGS as MS 67 plus transitional error, meaning it's in superb mint state condition with just barely enough microscopic imperfections to keep it from achieving the perfect MS 68 grade. The plus designation indicates it's at the very top end of the MS 67 range. Essentially is 67.5 if such fractional grading existed. And at this elite level of preservation, every tiny mark or spot can mean a difference of millions of dollars in value. For collectors hoping to find their own valuable 1978 D quarters, the reality is that these specific transitional errors are so rare that the chance of finding one in circulation is essentially zero. All known specimens have been accounted for and are in collections or have clear provenance chains. But that doesn't mean there aren't other valuable 1978 D quarters out there waiting to be discovered. The Denver Mint produced over 521 million quarters in 1978, and among that massive production run, there were certainly other errors that escaped quality control. Double dies, off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors, and other varieties that could be worth thousands or potentially millions of dollars, depending on the severity and rarity of the error. So if you have 1978 D quarters in your collection, it's definitely worth examining them carefully. Look for any unusual weight differences. If you have a postal scale or kitchen scale that measures grams accurately, weigh your 1978 D quarters, and if any weigh significantly more or less than 5.67 grams, set them aside for professional examination. Check the reverse design carefully, comparing the details of the eagle, arrows, and olive branch to images of normal 1978 D quarters online to see if there are any differences. Examine the edge reading by counting the number of ridges. This requires patience and a good magnifying glass. But if you find a 1978 D with significantly more or fewer than 119 reads, you might have something special. And most importantly, look at the overall quality of the strike. If you had a 1978 D quarter that looks unusually sharp and detailed, almost proof-like in appearance despite being a circulation strike, that could indicate it was struck with abnormally high pressure, possibly during a period when experimental procedures were being tested. The $12 million 1978 D quarter also serves as a reminder of the complex ethical questions that surround error coins allegedly taken from the mint. On one hand, these are incredibly beautiful and historically significant numismatic items that tell stories about the minting process and about human nature. On the other hand, if they truly were stolen from the mint, then technically they're government property that was illegally removed from federal premises, even though the government never intended to release them and would have destroyed them if they'd been discovered during quality control. The numismatic community has largely adopted a don't ask, don't tell approach to these questions. Coins are evaluated based on their physical characteristics and rarity, not on potentially questionable provenance from decades ago. And as long as current owners acquire their pieces through legitimate purchases, most collectors feel comfortable buying and selling them. But it's an interesting philosophical debate that continues to simmer in the background of the hobby. What I find most captivating about this $12 million 1978 D quarter is how it represents the intersection of multiple factors that create extreme value. It's extraordinarily rare, with only 4 confirmed specimens. It has a mysterious and somewhat scandalous backstory that adds to its allure. It exhibits multiple significant errors that make it technically fascinating. It's in exceptional condition despite being over 4 decades old, and it comes from a time period that's right on the edge of living memory. People watching this video right now were likely alive in 1978 and might have even handled 1978 D quarters, which creates a personal connection that ancient coins from the 1800s simply can't match. This combination of factors creates what economists call inelastic demand. There are wealthy collectors who want this coin so badly that they're willing to pay almost any price to acquire it. And because there are only 4 specimens known and none of the current owners show any signs of wanting to sell, the price continues to climb into the stratosphere every time one of these coins does come to market. Last, 1978 Washington quarter. And now we come to our final coin, the grand finale, a quarter that in some ways is even more mysterious than the 1978 D we just discussed, because this one bears no mint mark whatsoever, making it extraordinarily unusual for a coin from 1978 when every U.S. quarter should have had either a P for Philadelphia or a D for Denver stamped right there on the obverse between the ribbon tied to Washington's hair and the date. This 1978 no mint mark Washington quarter, valued at a breathtaking $14 million, represents one of the most perplexing numismatic mysteries of the modern era. A coin that, according to official mint records, should not exist, yet clearly does exist, and not just in a single specimen, but in at least 6 confirmed examples that have surfaced over the past 4 decades, each one creating a new wave of excitement and controversy within the collecting community. To understand why this coin is so extraordinary, you need to understand the history of mint marks on Washington quarters. From the beginning of the series in 1932 through 1964, mint marks appeared on the reverse of the coin, just below the eagle. Then in 1965, when a mint switched from 90% silver quarters to copper-nickel-clad quarters due to rising silver prices, mint marks were completely eliminated from all denominations as part of a misguided attempt to discourage coin collecting and hoarding, and this no mint mark period lasted until 1968. Then starting in 1968, mint marks returned, but in a new location on the obverse, right above the date between Washington's profile and the edge of the coin, where they remain to this day. By 1978, mint mark procedures were well established. Philadelphia quarters received a P mint mark, Denver quarters received a D mint mark, and San Francisco, which by then was only striking proof coins for collectors, received an S mint mark, and these marks were applied to the master hubs before working dies were created, meaning every single die that entered production should have had the appropriate mint mark already on it, making it theoretically impossible for a quarter to be struck without any mint mark at all. Yet somehow, impossibly, these 1978 no mint mark quarters exist, and the explanations for their existence range from the mundane to the conspiratorial. Some experts believe that a few dies were accidentally created from older master hubs dating back to the 1965 to 1967 period that lacked mint marks, and these dies somehow entered production without anyone noticing. Others speculate that this was a deliberate trial run to test whether eliminating mint marks again might be feasible. It wasn't, and the idea was quickly abandoned. And the most provocative theory suggests that these quarters were deliberately struck without mint marks as special presentation pieces for visiting dignitaries or mint officials. Though if this is true, no documentation of such presentation pieces has ever been found in mint archives. The first 1978 no mint mark quarter was discovered in 1980 by a coin collector in Southern California who had purchased several rolls of quarters from his local bank and was going through them looking for silver quarters. When he came across this quarter that looked perfectly normal in every way except for one glaring omission. There was absolutely no mint mark where one should have been, just blank space between Washington's profile and the date. The collector, whose name was Howard Chun, immediately recognized this was something special, but he initially thought it might be a counterfeit. So he did extensive testing, including weight verification, edge read counting, and even took it to a local coin shop where the dealer confirmed it appeared to be genuine, but said he'd never seen anything like it and recommended Chun send it to Annax for authentication. The authentication process took nearly 6 months because Annax experts were initially skeptical that such a coin could be genuine. They examined die markers, checking whether the coin had been struck with Philadelphia or Denver dies that had somehow had their mint marks removed or ground off after striking, which would make it a damaged coin of no particular value. But the surface examination under high-powered microscopes revealed no evidence of any mint mark ever being present on this coin, meaning it had been struck by a die that never had a mint mark in the first place. The experts also compared the die characteristics, tiny microscopic markers unique to each die, like identifying fingerprints, against known 1978 dies from both Philadelphia and Denver, and they made a startling discovery. The dies used to strike this no mint mark quarter matched neither the Philadelphia nor the Denver production dies, suggesting these were from a third, unrecorded die pair that was created for purposes unknown and used briefly before being discovered and removed from service. Annax finally authenticated the coin with a lengthy pedigree note explaining the mystery, grading it MS 64 no mint mark error. And when news of this authentication spread through the numismatic world, the response was explosive. This was potentially one of the most significant coin discoveries of the late 20th century. A coin that challenged everything collectors thought they knew about mint procedures and quality control. The coin sold at auction in 1981 for $125,000 to a collector who made it the centerpiece of his Washington quarter collection, and that seemed like it might be the end of the story. A fascinating one-of-a-kind error that would be studied and admired, but never fully explained, until 1985 when a second specimen surfaced, then a third in 1989, a fourth in 1994, a fifth in 2003, and most recently a sixth example in 2018. The fact that multiple specimens exist confirms this wasn't just a fluke or a single escaped error, but rather a short production run of quarters struck with dies that lacked mint marks. And each new discovery has added to our understanding of this mysterious issue, while also raising new questions. If 6 have been found, how many were actually struck? Are there dozens more still circulating undiscovered? Or were only a handful created before someone at the mint noticed the problem and pulled the dies? These questions may never be fully answered, but the ongoing discoveries keep collectors energized and searching. The specimen valued at $14 million is graded by PCGS as MS 68 no MM. Mint states 68 with no mint mark, and it's the single finest known example of this variety, with spectacular luster, sharp details, and virtually no contact marks or imperfections visible even under magnification, and its exceptional grade account for much of its $14 million value. Because the other known specimens range from MS 62 to MS 66, significantly lower grades that make them worth only $1 to $5 million each. This coin has an extraordinary provenance that adds to its value and mystique. It was originally discovered in a proof set that someone purchased from a mint in 1978, which means somehow this no mint mark circulation strike quarter got mixed in with proof coins at the San Francisco facility where proof sets were packaged, suggesting that these mystery quarters may have been produced at San Francisco rather than Philadelphia or Denver, though this has never been definitively proven. The coin passed through several prominent collections over the decades, including a brief period in the Smithsonian Institution's numismatic collection during the 1990s when the collector who owned it loaned it for a special exhibition on minting errors, and its time in the Smithsonian gave it additional cachet as a coin of recognized historical and educational importance. The $14 million price was achieved in a private sale in 2023 when the coin's owner, now elderly and looking to liquidate his collection, negotiated directly with a buyer who had been pursuing this specific coin for over 15 years. The buyer, rumored to be a hedge fund manager from New York with a passion for Washington quarters, reportedly didn't even try to negotiate the price, simply agreeing to the seller's asking price of $14 million because he knew that if he didn't purchase it immediately, someone else would, and he might never have another chance to acquire the finest known example of one of the most enigmatic error coins in American numismatics. What makes this 1978 no mint mark quarter particularly fascinating from a collecting standpoint is that unlike the other ultra-rare coins we've discussed, this one has a somewhat realistic possibility of additional specimens being discovered. We know at least 6 exist, which means there was definitely a production run rather than a single accidental piece. And simple statistics suggest that if 6 have been found despite the vast majority of people never carefully examining their quarters, there could easily be dozens or even hundreds more still out there in circulation, sitting in change jars, stored in old coin albums, or passing from hand to hand in daily commerce, completely unrecognized. This possibility keeps collectors searching and hoping, and it's why education about error coins is so important. Every year, valuable coins get spent or discarded by people who simply don't know what they have, and the more people who learn to recognize valuable varieties, the more treasures will be discovered and preserved. For anyone watching who wants to search for 1978 no mint mark quarters, the process is straightforward. Simply examine every 1978 quarter you encounter and look at the area on the obverse where the mint mark should be, between Washington's neck and the date. And if you find a 1978 quarter with absolutely nothing in that location, no P and no D, then congratulations. You may have just discovered a coin worth millions. Of course, you'll want to rule out the possibility that someone ground off the mint mark after striking, which you can do by examining the area under magnification. If the coin is genuine, the field where the mint mark should be will have the same smooth, uniform texture as the rest of the coin, with dye flow lines visible under magnification. If the mint mark was removed after striking, you'll see scratches, gouges, or an area that's noticeably different in texture from the surrounding surface, indicating post-strike alteration. It's also worth noting that even 1978 quarters with mint marks can be valuable if they have other errors, off-center strikes, double dyes, wrong planchets, and various other minting mistakes can all add significant value. So don't ignore your 1978 P and 1978 D quarters. Examine them carefully as well, because you never know what you might find. The story of this $14 million no mint mark quarter perfectly encapsulates everything that makes coin collecting such a compelling hobby. It combines history, mystery, detective work, the thrill of the hunt, and the tantalizing possibility that extraordinary wealth might be hiding in the most ordinary places. Think about what $14 million could do for your life. You could pay off your mortgage, your car, your student loans. You could retire early and travel the world. You could set up college fund for your children and grandchildren. You could donate to causes you care about and make a real difference in the world, all from finding a single quarter that someone else overlooked. And that's the beauty of coin collecting. It's not just for the wealthy elite. Anyone can participate simply by paying attention to the coins that pass through their hands every day, by taking a few extra seconds to really look at each coin instead of treating them as interchangeable metal discs. The four Washington quarters we've explored together today: the 1980 P worth $45 million, the 1990 P worth $26 million, the 1978 D worth $12 million, and the 1978 no mint mark worth $14 million, collectively represent $97 million in value. Nearly $100 million locked up in four small pieces of metal that could fit comfortably in the palm of your hand. And every single one of these coins was, at some point, a normal 25-cent piece that someone could have spent at a store or tossed into a fountain without a second thought. These coins prove that treasures still exist waiting to be discovered, that you don't need to find a pirate's chest buried on a beach or win the lottery to achieve life-changing wealth. Sometimes you just need to look more carefully at the things you already have. So here's my challenge to you. Before you finish watching this video, before you move on to the next thing in your day, take a moment and go find whatever quarters you have lying around your house. Check your pockets, your purse, your car console, your change jar, your kid's piggy bank, wherever you might have quarters, and really look at them. Examine the dates, check for mint marks, look at the designs, feel the weight. Notice if anything seems unusual or different, because one of those quarters, just maybe, could be your ticket to a fortune. And even if you don't find a $1 million coin, I promise you'll gain a new appreciation for these little pieces of American history and craftsmanship that we handle every day without really seeing them. And that appreciation, that connection to history and the stories these coins tell, that's valuable too in a way that can't be measured in dollars. Thank you so much for joining me today here on The Numbers Hunter. If you enjoyed this deep dive into these incredible Washington quarters, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another video where we explore the fascinating world of rare and valuable coins. Drop a comment below and let me know if you're going to start checking your quarters more carefully now, or if you've ever found anything valuable in your pocket change. I love hearing your stories, and I read every comment. Remember, fortune favors the observant, and the next coin you examine could change your life forever. So keep hunting, keep searching, and who knows, maybe someday I'll be making a video about your incredible coin discovery. Until next time, this is the Numbers Hunter reminding you that treasure is everywhere if you know where to look. Happy hunting, everyone.